network started, so sort of the end of 2017, 2018, with I think an increasing number of people in Plymouth from across different sectors starting to think about what are the root causes for some of the behaviours we were seeing, like I suppose thinking about the world of addiction and substance misuse, thinking about how people ended up in the criminal justice system, and feeling like a lot of our responses were dealing with the behaviours, with the effect, but not really thinking about what was behind that. Warren Larkin was starting to do some talks around adverse childhood experiences, and there were a few of us who kept piping up at strategic meetings saying, well, should we be looking at first adverse childhood experiences? And then when we looked into that more broadly at trauma and the impact of trauma, we came down to values, that it was about psychological safety, that it was about being genuinely person-centred, and that involved really thinking about people's lived experience and how do we create more, I suppose, accessible conversations where whether you're a commissioner or someone who's delivering services or someone receiving services, we're starting to have a shared understanding about what trauma means in the city and across a range of services. If you look at other areas, they tended to be trauma-informed in early years or trauma-informed in the police or in sort of violence reduction, whereas we went with the whole of Plymouth. It doesn't matter whether you're working in elder care or whether you're working in sort of learning disability or whether you're working in early years. It matters to all of us in the sort of world of health, wellbeing and social care.
We were so scared back in sort of 2018-19 that trauma-informed was just the latest buzzword, and it was just going to be, everybody gets excited about it and then it just fizzles out. And it hasn't, the momentum, we've got so much to be proud of down here in the southwest. The momentum has just built, and the buzzword idea is long gone. This is here to stay. It's absolutely fundamental and integral to the work that any of us are doing.
People I remember having initial conversations would have been Simon Hardwick from the police, and Shelley Shaw was really important in that as well, because she dropped in the idea of a workforce development survey, which was ridiculously ambitious. It was for all of children's, all of complex lives, all of adults, so went out to hundreds of people. And a few of us, so Ollie Mackey and a guy called Mike Taylor in past, thought how can we almost use this opportunity with a bit of funding to find out what people think about trauma-informed practice. And up until that point, I don't think those are the sort of questions we were asking. It took people about an hour to complete, but nearly 500 people did it. And most of them did reams of writing about their experience and about how they felt like trauma, I suppose, informed practice was missing from their work. It started with a handful of us doing talks to anyone who'd listened. They tended to be about an hour. But it was very much, here's a bit of Warren Larkin, here's a bit of Karen Kreisman, and then over time, well, we've come up with a lens, and this is what people in Plymouth are telling us, and realised an hour was nowhere near long enough, and started to think about, well, how do we come up with something that is for everyone?
I had about, I don't want to tell you how many iterations of the slides, 80 plus kind of versions of the slides.
I just remember looking at your laptop and just being like, we need to sort your slide decks out. There were too many.
Because the history of the training is within them.
The first 3 trainings we did, which was early 2020, so we did one in January, one in February, and had one planned for March. And it went live on the Safeguarding Partnership, and they had, I think it was about 600 responses to our 90 spaces, our first 90 spaces. So it was just like this overwhelming, like, oh wow, this is wanted in the city, which was just amazing.
That was in a matter of days. It was really, really striking. It was really overwhelming. There was that much demand, like immediately, for 90 places. It was like, okay, we need to carry on doing this. But then, of course, the pandemic had other ideas. And I remember us having so many conversations. We were really insistent for quite a long time, saying, no, this needs to be in the room. We need to be with people. We need to have eyes on people. We need to know how this is landing. Can't do this, can't possibly do this online. And then again, the pandemic had different ideas.
someone within the group sort of came to us and was like, I'm really fed up of turning up to meetings and people have made sourdough and people have started painting and I'm sat here watching Netflix and eating chocolate and that is how I'm surviving lockdown. This is what I'm doing to survive. And we were like, there's going to be lots of people like this. We need to think about this. And then the training, same boat, different storm. Same storm, different boat. Clearly why that title has changed because I never got the hang of it, came about, which is now our vicarious trauma training. And then we had to go back into the room.
Which was such a delight. That was so wonderful when we went, yeah, we're ready. We can go back to doing the full day. And we were back in the room with people.
Being trauma informed is obviously a core part of who we are and how we deliver services across the Plymouth Alliance. And many of the people we support have, significant experiences of trauma. And we do need to respond with empathy and kindness and respect. So the training has been absolutely fantastic in giving us a kind of a toolbox to be able to deliver our services in a way that really aligns with our values around inclusivity.
Every training you pick up something different, don't you? Someone asks a question and it makes you think, and then you go into work and then you're different because actually you've thought about it and I'm going to do it differently because I can be the different that makes a difference if I do it differently.
I deliver training and reflective learning programs all the time. I live and breathe this stuff, and yet I'm still having that experience on a daily basis. It's just such a vast field.
The Trauma Informed Network really kindly allowed us to have access to some of the data you've been collecting from the feedback forms on your training. And one of our MSc students, he looked at that data for his dissertation. It gave Eugene a chance, whilst he was on that course, to look at the principles of trauma-informed care, to come along to a training event, and then to think about how people were giving feedback on that training and what they'd taken from it. It was really interesting to look at the answers to the qualitative questions, which were about did you find most useful about the training, what did you find least useful, and what's something you'd do differently as a result. So Eugene did a content analysis of all of those entries. One of the themes that came out was people's ability to recognise trauma had been enhanced as a result of being on the training. And also people were feeling more confident about how to apply those ideas in practice. I think it's felt like people got an awful lot from their interactions they had with other people in the room on the day, learning from each other. There were an awful lot of pieces of data that were about the discussions that were had in the room and people really valuing that chance to discuss and think together.
I think it's just fantastic to have the space and the opportunity to come out and to meet with other professionals, other organisations, to share experiences. And I really enjoyed some of the kind of scientific and technical aspects of the training around the brain development. It just helps you understand why some of the barriers that people face are there. For us at PATH, it gives us the tools to build genuine and trusting relationships with our clients so that we can really walk alongside people in their journey out of homelessness.
I think my first highlight was in the first 2 sessions that we delivered, and someone came up to one of us at the end and she said, obviously I won't give too much detail, but she sort of said that she had had childhood trauma and it had always impacted her in a way that wasn't very helpful, and that listening to the training, she was going away and could reframe it. And I just remember thinking, if this training never gets back up and running, we've done something with it, it's achieved something.
Also a sense of how needed it's been and the impact that it has, and I think that's just been humbling all the way through when you're in a room of people and you can just see the impact that it's having on people in different ways. It's a privilege when somebody comes and shares some of their story or shares how something has particularly resonated with them, and I think we've been utterly blessed to have lots of those experiences.
Like, I know the number is 5,000, like we've had 5,000 people sitting in the room with us, but the number it's actually going to have reached is going to be so much bigger because people talk about it.